till about 2020. Now in 2018, I decided to end a relationship that I was in for 9 years. Why I decided to end that relationship was because it had become very toxic for my mental health. And I had started to spiritually evolve. And the drugs just wasn't for me anymore. So once I came home from prison in 2016, and the guy that I was with, I think he came home from prison in 2018 or 17, I think the end of 17. So, I had all this time, to get my little shit together. Mind you, when I came home from prison, I didn't go back to drugs because it was this whole big thing. Like, I had, it was a whole big spiritual thing, so I wasn't into the drugs. But when he came home, like he always does, we ended up back into the drugs, and it had become a real big problem. Like, it had become a really big problem because, as I evolve, my gifts evolve, and doing drugs with my gifts evolving is fucking terrifying. So, so we started to get back into that. Now, he decided he wanted to be a pimp. And so he stopped coming home, asked me if I wanted to be a madam. It was just a lot of different things. And I found myself getting angry. And I'm not a person of anger, so I don't like the way it makes me feel. It drains me of my energy. And so when I found myself like at a standoff in the middle of the road with my boyfriend, like we both got our sets up, we ready to go in, we out there fighting like two niggas in a boxing ring, I knew that was the end of the road for me, or for us, for that relationship, because I was too angry. I was angry to the point where I wanted to knock his teeth down his fucking throat. And that was a problem for me. Like, I don't like anger. That's an energy I'll never sit in. It's very low vibrational. It's very, it'll make you do things that you will regret. Even if you say something that you'll regret, it's just, I don't like the energy. And so I decided I was going to leave that relationship. It was one night I was really, really high, and I didn't want to leave his side because he was trying to be a pimp, and he had the girls, excuse my French, out there, and they had his phone. Every time I called, they were answering the phone, and da-da-da-da. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna sit out here with you, knowing I didn't want to be out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was just not me. I'm a homebody. Like, I've always been a homebody. So, I was out there, and I started to hear and see shit. So they thought I was going crazy. They was like, oh, I'm like, so y'all telling me y'all don't see that? Anyway, that's another story. I don't want to get into that because that one was kind of freaky. It was freaky to the point where, yeah, that's not something I want to get into. But when that happened, that's when I knew I wanted out of that. So I started making plans to leave. And so I did. Now we're going to fast forward. I ended up leaving him the house, made sure he had a car, did what I had to do. I packed my things in my car, and I went to my sister's house for a couple of months. And then this guy that I knew, that I met when I came home the first time, he kept calling. He was already calling me a couple of months before, and he was like, oh, I'm about to get this money. I'm coming to get you. We're going to go move to Georgia. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. $500,000 this man got. And he said he was coming to get me. And so I was like, okay. So the drug thing, and then him calling, it all just fell into place for me. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't leave him to go with the other guy. I left him because I didn't want to be in that. So, yeah. So the guy, he ended up coming to get me. He's from Hollywood. He ended up coming to get me, and we went to Georgia. Now, he does coke. I'm not gonna say, that's not something that I like or dive into, or that's not my DOC. DOC? We're gonna say that. That's not my DOC. So, yeah, but he knew what my DOC was. Molly, X, things like of that sort. And so some kind of way he happened to find that in Georgia. And so here I was again on the fucking hamster wheel of drugs. So this is a time. So I'm up here, and I don't know what kind of shit they had up there, but that shit there heightened my senses so fucking high. Like, they heightened my senses so much, like a sense of it was like a sense of paranoia, but I knew it wasn't paranoia because I used to test the things that I was seeing. Like, the people that I knew were, paying attention, I used to test the shit out of them. And so I don't know why, I just used to do it. So I can't, it's like, it was these vehicles, like fucking vans, trucks, all really, 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 really dark tents, long antennas, like parked across the street, like everywhere. So I would just look out the window, I would watch them, and then when I like pointed out, because I've been using my telepathy, this is when I started to use my telepathy, and then I would say things like, I see you sitting down there in this black truck with these dark tents and this long antenna. And as soon as I would say that, the truck would pull off. Now, mind you, this truck had been sitting there for hours, probably days. But when I mentioned it, I see you, the truck would leave. And 10 minutes later, another car would pull up. Different car, dark tents, but you can tell that it all was connected. So anyway, another story for another day. Now, let's get into it. I'm not gonna lie, I ended up wanting to come home because he was trying to live a lifestyle that I didn't want to live. I was already on my shit. I had my own car, I had my own place, I was okay, and I didn't have to come up there, so I didn't have to submit to his will that he was trying to make me bend to. I didn't have to. And so once I realized that it was a road of destruction, because you got $500,000, I'm giving you a plan straight forth I'm giving you a full-blown plan that doesn't take much education. It doesn't take, all you need is some money, and what I'm giving you can be accomplished. But because he got tricked into believing that my knowledge wasn't useful because I didn't have the book smarts, I didn't have the certificate, I didn't have the business certificate, I didn't have the schooling, quote unquote, to know these things. He had another woman influence him into believing that I was trying to use him and that I would lead him down a bad path. Now, mind you, I pay attention very well. I know this nigga don't like to work. This nigga don't like to work. He don't like to work. He don't like to do no hard work. He don't like to do none of that. He's one of those manipulative type of niggas. He'll let a female take care of him before he goes and take care of himself. He'll sell drugs before he go get a job. This type of energy. And so when she's trying to convince him to get a mobile detailing business, I'm like, that's not a good investment. I don't think that's a good investment. For one, a mobile detailing business, it takes a lot of time and patience and effort and hard work. You have to get out there in that sun. You gotta work. You gotta put that work in. You gotta advertise. You gotta be patient. You gotta understand that, you just gotta know what you're gonna invest into. You gotta know that if you're not a person that's good with hard work, then you need to get a business that works for you, not a business that you have to work for. There's a difference. There's a big difference. And so my plan was for him to buy a duplex. I was like, you can buy a duplex, or you can buy an apartment building, rent it out. That's income. You can rent them out. You'll have income, not much work you have to do. If you do, you have to just hire somebody, come in, do the plumbing, do the electrical, do that. That's not work that you have to physically do, and you have the bread to pay for it. So why not do that? I thought that was a good idea, but no, she wanted him to get a car wash. Mind you, he's been dependent on her for about 18 years to pay his bill, to take care of him. He ain't got to work. He ain't got to do all this. She's a heavy-set woman. She has a beauty salon. She has these nice things, and she pampers him. So when he came upon this $500,000, the plan was to get you to burn out. I'm going to get you to burn out so that you can still have to come back and depend on me. And so he ended up buying a house in Georgia, and he ended up, buying a lot of things. He bought this real nice ass dump. I ain't gonna lie, that dump was raw as fuck. It was black, it had 30-inch rims on it. It was a drop top. That bitch had that wham in that thing. You know me, back in the day, I love that wham. That shit was loud, just disturbing the peace. I'm talking about, I ain't gonna lie, it was a raw ass little dump, but it cost a good little chunk of change. So, that was that. He ended up getting the house. But what was a red flag for me was, you got me to come up here with you, talking about how we finna do this, how we're finna do that. We're gonna do this and do that. You convinced me to leave my Toyota in Florida. You talk shit about my Toyota. Oh, don't nobody drive Toyotas. Don't nobody. I'm like, boy, you ain't even got no car. You ain't have no car. I'm like, boy, you ain't never had no car. You ain't never, don't sit around here and try to down my Toyota. I done had this Toyota for 4 years, and my baby got them feet on her, and she got that wham in there, so don't trip. So it was this whole big old thing. So he asked me what kind of car I wanted. I told him I wanted a Benz. I was real infatuated with them Benzes. I forget the model and the make, but I know it was a white Benz that I wanted. So he bought the Benz, but he put it in his name, and he told me to leave my Toyota in Florida. So I left it here, but I was still paying on it because that's my car. No, I'm not doing that. First of all, I don't trust people like that to give up everything that I own just to for you to have control over what I can and can't. That was a big fuck no for me. So yeah, I ended up leaving the Toyota here. And he had the Benz, so we had the Benz up there. And driving around. So I made it known. I was like, well, after a while, I started saying, well, when am I gonna get a car? Because you said you was going to get me a car. And he's like, oh, well, you got the Benz. I'm like, no, I don't got the Benz, because the Benz is not in my name. That's in your name. It can't be mine if it's not in my name. It's not my possession. So, I started to apply a lot of pressure on that. And he was like, okay, well, he's going to get me a car. So I started looking for a car. And then he just started to change. He started to change, and texting different girls, leaving, going. But it started to become a problem because he was going. I didn't realize he was in a gang. He was a Crip, and he was going back and forth between Alabama and Georgia. He had an ex-girlfriend in Georgia, and it was just in Alabama. He had an ex-girlfriend in Alabama, and was going back and forth about him and the girl, their beef, and she's a Blood, he's a Crip. I don't even know how that even mixed, but it was a whole big old thing. But you keep wanting me to ride with you to Alabama. You want to show me off. You want to show the bands off. You want to flash your money. And then you got all these fucking haters. So I felt like it was a dangerous situation. Now you want to spend all this money on drugs. You want to become a drug dealer. You want to get pounds of fucking coke, knowing that's your drug of choice, that's your DOC, but you want to get a pound of that and try to sell it. You ever heard of do not get high off your own supply? And when I realized he wanted to do that, it was really a fuck no for me, because first of all, it's the selling drugs part. I was out of that lifestyle, but the fact that you wanted to get the drug of your choice to sell, first of all, my mind is, bitch, you gonna overdose. That's just one. And then it's like, okay, like, no, it was a fuck no for me. So I was like, look, I appreciate all of it, but I just want to go back to Florida, because it's not working for me. I'm back up here. I'm on drugs. Like, I back on drugs. You going back and forth between Alabama and Georgia every 3 or 4 days, beefing with this girl. You want to show me off. Y'all arguing on the phone. It was just a bunch of conflict that I didn't want no parts of. I saw destruction. I didn't see that going anywhere. I don't give a fuck how much money you got. I really don't. That shit doesn't do anything for me if I don't feel safe. And so I wanted to come home. So he's like, oh, okay, well, you could go home, this, and that, and this. I forgot how he was going to send me home. But this thing, he was just going to send me there, like, no money, no nothing. Just like, he had a whole little pissy ass, little hoe ass, little attitude. So I'm like, well, hold up. I say, nigga, you done made me quit my job. Bitch, you done made me leave my car. Bitch, how the fuck I'm going to get back to Florida? You ain't going to give me no bread to get back to Florida? Like, I could catch a Greyhound, bitch, or something, like a fucking train or something. Like, I could, like, you just gonna tell me, like, that was a big problem. So you know how it is, that word fuck nigga, make a nigga move real quick. So I was like, boy, you acting like a real fuck nigga, boy. You ain't gonna leave me up here like that and just because I don't want to be here, because I want to go back home, boy. Don't act like no fuck nigga, boy. I've been knowing you too long for you to be a fuck nigga. So he just looked at me. He just looked at me hiding his little taters, and he went to the bank. He came back. He gave me $10,000, and he was like, "Huh, Felicia, man, I would never do that to you. Like, I ain't no fuck nigga. I don't want you to ever think I'm a fuck nigga." And so he gave me the 10 bands, and I tried to find my way back. You know, I ended up calling my cousin. My cousin stayed in Tallahassee. I wasn't too far from Tallahassee. I was like 2 hours from Tallahassee. So I ended up calling my cousin Tony, and he came to get me from Tallahassee. He came to get me from Georgia. And I went to his house for a few days. Now, that's that. Let's get back into COVID. Whew. I be having to give y'all a little backstory, because it all adds up. It all makes sense. Like, the drugs play a big part in it. In my awareness. So